Hey guys, I'm Lara Satrakian with our weekly Syria Saturday Hangout. It's our chance as reporters to bring our notes to the table and really try to make sense of what's going on with this week in the Middle East and this week in particular in Syria. A lot's happened. We've got a lot to process and some awesome people joining us to hang out. We have Henry Langston from Vice Media in London. We have Christy Wilcox, who's in Istanbul. Jordan Hattar, who's a U.S. college student who's spending this semester in Amman, delivering aid to refugees and covering the crisis as it plays out in that country. And our own Mohammed Sergi, our senior editor at Syria Deeply, who's in New York. I'm here in Beirut in a hotel room. That's what you're seeing behind me right now. And what we really want to do is help you understand what's going on in Syria, and starting with the state of play on the ground. It's been a very fierce week of fighting. There have been tremendous airstrikes by the Syrian regime on areas around Damascus, in Aleppo, in places where the regime is trying to take back ground that they've lost, in essence, to rebel hands. We were hearing time and time again that if you look at the map of Syria, and we're going to put that up so you can try to understand the places where all this is happening, there's one city in particular you can see on that map. There's Damascus, there's Aleppo, and right in between there's the city of Sarakib. That's been one of the places. There's been some intense fighting this week, and the battles there are basically, in a sense, changing the regime's access to various parts of the country, cutting off Damascus from Aleppo, from Latakia to a greater extent. So we're hearing that as really something that has the potential to be a game changer here. We're going to toss to Henry at Vice Media. Henry, you write a weekly column. You've been doing it for months, watching what happens on the ground in the fight. What did you pick up on this week, and why?
Well, the blog that I write is retrospective, so it's looking at the past week of events. The blog that I put out this week that came out on Wednesday, the main things that I picked up on were sort of obviously the ceasefire that we had this time last weekend, that I think most people would agree was a complete failure, and this is the third of its kind. So for me, it was about sort of highlighting that fact. And does that bring up the question that, is it dead for ceasefires now in this conflict? Should we be trying to sort of push for the same formula of a ceasefire? Because so far it clearly hasn't worked. And the other thing that I picked up on was the clashes between the Free Syrian Army and the Kurdish militias in Aleppo, which obviously adds another dimension to this already complicated conflict, that I think most people trying to understand this conflict, and most people who are reading about it, struggle to understand it already, and the key players involved. And over the past few months, you've had jihadis coming into the country, opening up another front, and now you have sort of the Kurdish militias defending their areas. They've tried to strike a balance between the two sides in this conflict, but as the Free Syrian Army move into more areas of Aleppo and to more areas of the country, they're going to find it hard to sort of stay neutral, and that's what we saw last week. And I think for the Free Syrian Army that causes a real problem, because they need momentum. As that's a key part of their tactics, and their success so far is keeping up the momentum against the regime. But if you have to start fighting a war on another front, that's going to make that really, really difficult.
There were also those clashes around the Palestinian areas of Damascus. There was those series of reports on abuses by rebel forces, caught on video, executions of the Syrian army, essentially.
Yeah.
This concern from the UN that these are potential war crimes. From the other side, is this just, as you watch this whole situation evolve, is this just total chaos now?
Well, I mean, we've seen these sort of abuses carried out by the Free Syrian Army before. I mean, there's a number of videos doing the rounds of sort of summary executions, but we mustn't forget that the Syrian army itself is consistently every day carrying out these abuses. And the UN obviously is right to highlight the fact that these are war crimes, but it should be fair and condemn both sides equally. But so far there's been little action that, to me, seems that it's going to really make any difference. I mean, both sides aren't listening to the UN in that kind of respect. There's no real pressure on the ground to stop these abuses. And with each side committing an abuse, the next day there's another abuse carried out by the next side. So it's just tit for tat, and I think it will continue. But surely it highlights that there's chaos. I mean, but we know this. It's a chaotic conflict. It's difficult to understand, and I I don't see it getting any less chaotic in the next couple of months, but I guess we'll see.
Mohammed, what were you picking up on? Open up your notebook for us from the week.
Well, one of the major battles that was won by the Free Syrian Army this week was in Sarakib, which is a town on the road between Damascus and Aleppo, and it's also a crucial point between the road of Latakia and Aleppo. This small village or small town, small city, it basically cuts out the supply lines for the regime coming in from both directions, and it isolates soldiers in Aleppo who have been fighting there for about 4 months now. So we have that aspect there. A bit northeast of Aleppo, or northwest of Aleppo, is a village called Harim, which is on the border in Idlib province with Turkey, and that has been a stronghold of the regime, which has now fallen mostly into rebel hands. There are some regime soldiers and Shabiha who are holed up in the citadel there, and they're surrounded by the Free Syrian Army. So when we look at the change in who controls the ground, at least in the north, we're starting to see more and more the nucleus of a free zone, of a zone controlled by the rebels that could potentially be the Benghazi of the north, where they could coalesce their forces and move south towards Damascus. On the other hand, there's also fighting that has been ongoing in Damascus suburbs and into Damascus itself, and the regime has been using for the first time their MiGs and bombing neighborhoods right outside of Damascus and into Damascus. And the fear there for the regime is that the final battle will eventually come to Damascus, and they want to have at least their surroundings controlled.
We were speaking with activists from Duma, one of the areas outside of Damascus that saw heavy air fire in the past week, and we saw pictures. The city itself just pulverized, and people really suffering on the ground. Christy, I know you're in Istanbul now, but you've been on that border with Syria and Turkey, where there's been some intense fighting the past 24 hours. What really stands out for you, and what's your reaction to everything that the guys just mentioned?
I think the one thing that stands out for me is there's a lot of fighting actually going on between the rebels. A lot of people have gone inside and seen, the situation in Aleppo where the rebels are fighting the PKK, and then they actually came to a standstill and decided, okay, let's not fight each other. And then somebody in Azaz has also saw 2 different battalions fighting each other and said, once again, we shouldn't be fighting each other. We should be, moving forward with fighting the regime. And then today you're seeing a lot of retaliation in the city, in Idlib city, primarily based on the fact that the rebels have grabbed onto or attacked the key military base, which is in Taftanaz. So I would say those are the main things that are going on in the most, last couple days.
Jordan, I know you were a student at UC Long Beach, just heading into your junior year when you decided to go to Amman and start helping in this crisis. And it was mostly a humanitarian thing. But, I mean, first off, is any of this confusing you? Is there anything you want to hash out in greater detail before we hear about what you see on the ground?
No, it's amazing to be on this panel with you guys. And just echoing what Christy and Mohammed said, it's like... I'm hearing things from a few of the refugees in the Zaatari refugee camp along the Syria-Jordan border, or actually some of them are from Aleppo. So they talk about how there's this almost like a zone that can be kind of like the Benghazi area was, but except that there still are attacks by air there. And then just I'm hearing more and more that there's no winner in war, and just today I heard how there were a lot those posts on the way from Damascus to Aleppo where a lot of the government soldiers were killed, and I watched the YouTube video of the Free Syrian Army shooting the government soldiers. So yeah,
pretty gruesome stuff, and we keep hearing again and again that it's a stalemate in Syria. It's a kind of very unstable equilibrium where in a way the rebels are winning the ground war, but the regime still has aerial power that can pound these places and can overwhelm anything in terms of weapons or capacity that the rebels have. Mohammed and I interviewed one of the spokespeople for the local coordination committees this week. They were saying the same sort of thing. It's this stalemate, but it's a deadly stalemate, and it's just dragging on and on. Just back us up, Jordan, and tell us where you were 6 months ago and how you got where you are and what you're doing.
Yeah. Well, I was learning Arabic at Long Beach in Southern California, and my teacher's from Damascus. And so, a few days of the year, she would come to class just crying, and she would talk to the class about some of the stories, but she wouldn't go into a lot of detail. And then a couple of days, I stayed after class and just talked to her about it. And, one story that stuck out was her brother-in-law was picking a neighbor's body off the street hours after everything had calmed down, yet the sniper decided to shoot him and his son. So just seeing my Syrian teacher's family, be hurt like that, it really personalized the conflict for me. And I was writing different articles and trying to get stuff published in the LA Times and stuff, but I really just wanted to go to try to get some of the stories out and try to, maybe try to humanize the conflict for people back home. And so that's hopefully what I'm trying to do right now.
And then started the fundraising campaign. Tell us how that went.
Yeah. So this summer I had a friend who's a website designer. He helped me start. It's called Help for Refugees, the number 4, helpforrefugees.org, to deliver humanitarian aid. And UC Irvine donated 2 suitcases of medicine. Actually, this upcoming week, we're facilitating the donations of those medicines.
From Southern California to
a lot of them are, important prescription medicine that you can't get over the counter here in Jordan. Carl Wilkins, the one guy that is speaking at different high schools and colleges, he's a humanitarian. He's putting me on the phone with him, and we're having donate my website as a way for them to donate, because the biggest need right now in the Zaatari refugee camp where I've been reporting from is better shelter for the winter. There was just an 18-month-old little girl that died in the little storm we had because 100 tents blew over, and she was out in the cold all night, Urmia, and
yeah, Jordan, your connection's slowing a bunch there, but our producer Mike Downs teed up some of the photos that you took in the Zaatari refugee camp. So we're going to put them up for people to see. And if you tell us a little about the people you've met in the camps and a little bit about their stories as you've come to know them. We might be moving a little slow here with the connections across different cities. So just start telling us about some of these folks and hopefully
yeah. That little girl, the first one, Lillian, she's 8 years old, and I was interviewing her family and her uncle. I didn't know it was her uncle. I thought it was her dad. I said, "Do you have anyone missing from your family?" And the uncle pointed at the 2 girls that were laughing next to me, and that girl was one of the 2 little girls. And then all of a sudden, her face just starts. She's paralyzed, and because she understands we're talking in Arabic about her dad, and she just starts crying. And we have to, put the video down because it wasn't right to do that to her. So I've tried to make a conscious effort to get to know her a little better. And so I've visited her the last couple times I've gone to the camp. She wants to be a doctor when she grows up, and she just wants her dad back. Her dad's been missing. The Syria government took him, and they're from the Dara in southern Syria. Here you have you have a mom and a daughter. The mom's name is Rabiha. The girl's name is Hala. And Rabiha, it was her birthday the other day, and I asked her what she wanted for her birthday, and she looked me in the eyes. She got really close to me, and her eyes are really beautiful, and she just said, "I just want the fighting to cease." And she said it in an Arabic word I can't remember, but it was just like 2 words, and you could tell that's all she wanted. And even though I asked her, what else do you want? And she said, that's all I want. She could have complained about, how her son was sick from the water he was drinking, but she just really wants a peaceful end to this conflict. And the day after her birthday, I got to sing happy birthday with her kids to her. And I asked how her birthday was. And, she's so hospitable, and she gives us, when we go into her house, I refuse to take the drinks, but she even punches the straw inside the drink. So I have to, drink the juice she gives me, and that's her kid's ration, or her ration for the day. This is Rabiha's family right here. She's the one with the blue hijab.
Jordan, we'll make sure that these photos are posted on Google Plus and on the Syria Deeply page with everything you're seeing. But before we move off this, can you tell us what life is like in the Zatari refugee camp? What do people have? What are they missing?
They're really missing clothes is a huge thing. Before Eid, there was a big clothes distribution by a European organization, but that was just for the kids that were under like 6 or 7 years old. So most of the women only have one pair of clothes, and it's a problem because the towels are too small, really, or some of them actually don't have towels because they've been ruined, and the UNHCR won't give them another towel. So they feel very vulnerable when they go try to take a shower because they have nothing to hide their bodies with. Because I was with a woman translator, and so that story was told to her. They wouldn't tell it to a man. So I got that secondhand. But I got it a few times, so that story's very consistent. But, as far as in the camp, the water, it's bad. The food, the meat gets a lot of people sick. The meat they're giving out at lunch. But the biggest problem, I think, is just all these. Like we were interviewing 2 little kids who they were the only ones from their family in the camp, and their 7 other siblings were still in Dara with their mom, and they couldn't handle being there themselves. 10 and 11-year-old boys, and one of the boys wouldn't even talk to us. He just started, he had a plastic knife, and he was cutting his whole ball, and he was just so scared. Asked their uncle, the mom had to choose, which 2 of her 9 kids she was gonna have to send to safety in the refugee camp, and she picked these 2 boys. And I don't know how much better they're doing than the siblings in Dara in Syria.
Christy, you've been in so many of these camps reporting in southern Turkey. How does this compare to what you've seen?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the comparisons, I'm surprised to hear this because it's very, very similar in the Turkey camp that's right beyond the Syrian border. They're really lacking the blankets. They need winter clothes. You should see these little kids run around in sandals. They don't have anything else there, and they actually get 2 blankets per family. Some of the women that I talked to said that the blankets are very thin, and they have to hand in their ID, their Syrian ID, in order to get these blankets for their families. So if they don't have a Syrian ID, which the majority of people do, you don't get a blanket. Now, as for the displaced, I ran into this very interesting story. This guy from the Netherlands came in, and he was a student and went into the refugee camps, saw the fact that these people needed blankets, and started reaching out to like grassroots organizations to see if he could maybe get blankets into these camps. And today he went into Aleppo. I can't wait to talk to him to see, what ended up happening. He was told to rather go in and provide the blankets that he got to the people that were displaced inside Syria, because there's word that the LCCs will actually help more of the people in the refugee camps than they will the displaced people who are obviously moving, around within.
So the greatest need is inside Syria in a sense because those people are so hard to reach?
Yes, I do believe so. I mean, the majority of refugees that I've talked to have moved from city to city to city just trying to find a safe point, really.
Mo, I know you've been tracking a lot of the social media buzz around so many issues. I mean, anything you're picking up on in terms of refugees or what life is like in Syria right now?
Not lately. I think the one of the most prominent things we're seeing on social media this week is just the video wars between the atrocities between of the Assad regime and the rebels. So we saw the first video of the execution of a bunch of soldiers in Sarakib, alleged execution, but still it's very damning video. And then we saw a few hours later there's a series of leaks that came out, and in one of them we saw soldiers. A whole bunch of them, maybe perhaps 100 around a small gathering of bodies, and the soldiers came down and cut off their ears as trophies. So we saw that video, and then there were other videos as well. So this is really what's playing out, at least from what I can see. But I definitely agree with Christy. The need for the displaced, the internally displaced in Syria, which number in perhaps 2.5 million or even more. The estimates just keep rising, and these people can't really go. They don't have the Red Cross or UN organizations coming in and helping them. There's very little aid that's going into the country. That's why the UN has tried to organize ceasefires so that they can go in and actually give this aid to the people. So it's a very difficult situation inside Syria, which is only going to get worse as the weather gets colder.
One of the things we're trying to do for Syria deeply as we build out a website to track all these stories is collect civilian testimonials of what life is like right now in different cities across the country. So I'm just going to read off a short snippet from a guy in Aleppo. He's a teacher. He's a Christian teacher in Aleppo, and he sent us his testimonial. So this is a little snapshot. He said, "I have a little bit of savings. It should last me for a few years here in Aleppo if I spend it wisely. But other people are spending everything they have or selling their jewelry if they have any just to put food on the table, essentially. Many people are already bankrupt. The city is on full stop. Factories are bombed and closed. All the workplaces are shut. At least half the population of Aleppo has left the city, if not more. Politically, there's no sign of hope. We can't have a ceasefire because the sides won't talk." That gets back, Henry, to what you were saying earlier, looking at that ceasefire and why it didn't work out. So when you kind of zoom out on the whole picture of Syria and this conflict as you've tracked it, I mean, where do you think we are right now?
Well, I mean, I guess a lot of people would use the word stalemate, but the past couple of days we've seen sort of a concerted push by the rebels. You know, we're constantly hearing that Aleppo is close to falling, but that sort of never really materializes. But like Christy mentioned earlier, we've seen a major air base in Taftanaz this morning being assaulted by a number of different rebel groups using tanks, Grad, rocket launchers, and you know, if that falls on top of Sarakib, then that's a real bonus for the rebels, I think, especially in the north. And I think Assad will be very hard pressed to take some of that land back, and whether he's able to mount a counterattack, I guess we'll have to see. But I'd say that they're so caught up in other parts of the country that they really struggle to mount a really effective counterattack.
It's interesting, we keep hearing these estimates that 75% of Aleppo is in rebel hands, or 90% of Aleppo is in rebel hands. I just heard that from a source here in Beirut. Mo, you're from Aleppo. You know the place better than most people on planet Earth. Any rough sense for how it really stands?
I don't know what the percentage is, but the fact is that the rebels have opened new fronts lately, and one of them is on the east, the western entrance to Aleppo, called the Leramoun, which comes from Anadan, Azaz, Afrin, all of these liberated villages along the path towards Turkey. So that is a very important junction. And then there's another one where the Air Force intelligence, about maybe 2 miles away from Leramoun, that is also surrounded. These areas are in western Aleppo, which have been under regime control for the majority of the Battle of Aleppo, the 3.5-month fight that has been going on. So there is progress on the ground. We received a question, actually, I just wanted to bring it in from Google+, and it says, do you think the rebels' inability to win is more a product of the lack of their organization? On that part, it's important to sort of look at this from a perspective of really what the capabilities of both sides are. On one hand, you have a Syrian government army that has been spending a good portion of GDP for the last 40 years buying Russian tanks and arms and anti-aircraft guns and organizing one of the largest military forces in the world. I mean, I think it's like the top 10 or top 15. And then on the other hand, you have a ragtag group of revolutionaries that have, risen up organically and are trying to coalesce. So taking on tanks and planes and helicopters with really just Kalashnikovs and RPGs, some of them that don't even have the full load in their heads, is a difficult thing to do. But organizing is the reason why the fighters have become able or more capable of actually coming in and taking ground. And the rebels in the north organized earlier this summer in something called the Liwa at-Tawhid, the Unitary Brigade, and they brought in thousands of fighters. Most of them are Syrians. There are some from abroad that came in or at least fought alongside them, and this is their their stand that they've taken. The second part of the question, I just want to go over that real quick, is it the best interest of the superpowers standing on the sidelines waiting for the rebels to organize? And this question is from Matthew Bowler. I just wanted to say there on that front, and maybe Mike or Christy could also add to that, is I think yes, I think it's probably in the interest of foreign powers to allow this Darwinian sense of organization to happen on the ground and allow the strongest factions of the rebels or the fighters to emerge. On the other hand, it's also a risk because extremism might rear its ugly head, and you would have, instead of secular pro-democracy fighters, you could have these fighters who are disillusioned with the West and are extremists in their Islamic rhetoric. So I thought that's an interesting point.
Mohammed, there was that interesting nugget from Rafif Shwejati in the interview yesterday, saying that there were also quiet dissidents within the Syrian regime who are now sabotaging some of the planes. That some of these gains might also be from people who are the quiet defectors. Christy, do you want to pipe in anything on this front?
I was actually going to make a comment on the last part that he was talking about. I mean, we're definitely, when the people that I've interacted, they're battalions that definitely respect their commanders and follow, a higher hierarchy, I guess you could say. But these people we're former business owners. They're doctors, they're lawyers. They're people who now have no business left. So, how do you organize those people? Yes, they're probably more willing to listen to a commander, but then, you're also getting in these people from other countries, foreigners, who are setting up their own battalions or katibas. So it's organization is very, very hard.
Henry, you want to pipe in?
Sure. I mean, I think they're always going to struggle. There's so many different groups, and I think the point that Mo was making about jihadis is a real problem, and we brought it up with Ambassador Fletcher last week, and I think they're just filling a void. The West isn't intervening, so they're going to find it easier to enter the country. They can get arms. They're well experienced fighting the Americans and the British in Iraq and Afghanistan. And if I were the rebels and I needed ammunition, I needed help, I needed forces and extra reinforcements, I might not share their opinions or their ideas on what post-conflict Syria will look like, but I think I'd be happy to take on the extra bodies and the extra expertise because, like also Christy said, a lot of these guys are just business owners. They're not fighters, some of them. And if you've got someone who's fought a very well-experienced modern army and has come away alive, then you're probably going to take that experience and that advice and use it as best as you can.
Transitioning from here to the political front, Henry, when we interviewed Ambassador Fletcher earlier this week, a big part of our focus was these talks coming up in Doha in the next few days, really the top headline of the week. This effort, it's been kind of led by the U.S., but we know it's been going on for a long time. Ambassador Fletcher said that he's known about it for some time, to try to get the opposition to unify. So basically you had a set of people inside the country opposing Assad, you had a set outside of the country opposing Assad. They're all going to try to come together in Doha to organize a new front, a new political hope, a transition plan, a critical name, Riyadh Saif. We've been profiling him over the past few days. He's kind of been tapped, or at least his name's been floating as a potential leader of that transitional government. And the hope is here that they would come up with a plan that would phase the Syria we see today with all that fighting to a future stable, hopefully prosperous place for the people who are suffering so much right now. Mo, can you get us into why you think this is such a key piece of news this week?
Yeah, because if we look at how we look back at the SNC failed on multiple fronts, and we're not, there's not enough time to go over that. But the main way that they failed is that they couldn't bring in all of the factions, or at least most factions of the opposition, and they were very loud against them. That was one aspect. They didn't have the support of the West or the Gulf countries in terms of money, and the money situation was very important. So this new organization, which still doesn't exist, and we don't know how it's going to work out, but it seems that Hillary Clinton, so the Obama administration, Doha, so it's in Qatar, the players that are backing the Syrian revolution are looking to find a new way, a new solution. And from what I hear on the ground, like inside of Syria and outside of Syria, this has really energized many activists and people looking on, and they're looking at this and thinking that this could be the formula that brings Syria out. But
we had one question.
It's yet to be seen.
We had one question posted on G+ before the hangout from Mark Hickey asking about these Doha talks, saying the U.S.-led opposition would have to engage local leaders in Syria, even with armed groups. How are they going to go about doing this? What we've heard so far, Mark and everybody, is that this is the effort to bring them all together, to get representation. Rafik Jwejati told us the LCCs will be sending someone. I've heard from a few sources that the Free Syrian Army will be present in Doha. We're, of course, trying to interview folks for the Free Syrian Army when we go there on Monday. And we're just trying to get a sense, because this is all just coming together. This is really a plan in formation. What we're watching for is any sign that there could be a cohesive membership. There've been a plan floated about the constitution of it. There would be roughly 50 members, that it would include the Syrian National Council, the SNC, that Mohammed referred to, but that it would basically try to fold everybody together under one big tent and have that kind of legitimacy on the ground, and give the people, certainly who've been not with Assad but not comfortable with the alternative, something to look forward to, something to hold on to, and more encouragement to really push toward a future Syria of a very different nature. Henry, I mean, you've been watching this from the conflict side. Do you see this as a game changer?
I'm hoping it. I'm hoping it is, yeah. But I think what everyone's also forgetting is, I mentioned it earlier, that the Kurdish community and how they play into this. I think if we get to the point where the conflict stops and we have to weigh up, Syria might not look like Syria. Its borders could change, and if the Kurdish community aren't willing to engage, this new opposition group in becoming part of Syria, they may still want to take, Syria, Kurdistan for themselves, which also poses problems for Turkey. So I think a lack of Kurdish involvement could lead to a real serious problem further down the line. But I think, the Free Syrian Army have to be involved. I mean, we have to look at this seriously, and we have to say that these are the only guys that physically, they're doing the hard work. And if they're not involved on any serious level, and people aren't listening to them, then there just isn't going to be any real development on the ground. It could all be, all this diplomacy could be for nothing. I think that's dangerous.
Christy, do you think it could stick, and what do you think of this Kurdish question?
I think that's a very interesting question, because, I mean, you're seeing uprisings in even Turkey when it comes to the Kurdish people. Whether this is the answer or not is kind of hard to tell. I'd like to feel positive about the whole thing, but it just seems like everything that has happened previously has fallen through. So maybe, a lot of people look up to this man, and maybe this is the change that is necessary.
Henry, in our interview with Ambassador Fletcher, and Mohammed in our interview with Rafiq Reijati, we heard the same notion that this way forward is the only way forward, that at this point, any kind of Western intervention is practically ruled out. Rafiq Reijati basically saying that moment, that opportunity is kind of past. So everyone looking to Doha as the next great hope, whether or not it sticks. I'm going to do something I usually... Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
All right, great. I think we might have lost Christy for a second. I'm going to do something I usually hate, but I can't resist. Here in Beirut, on the cover of the Daily Star today, which is the Lebanese newspaper here, there are folks in Binish holding up a banner in peaceful protest saying, Ashab Suri Wahid. And that was something that we heard from Rafif, and I want to bring it up because, Mohammed, we saw this return to peaceful protest. You talked about Binish in that hangout yesterday. Do you think there's a resurgence here of hope? Are you seeing more of these peaceful protests come out, somehow encouraged by the Doha talks and that headline?
Maybe, maybe not. One thing is the peaceful protests never stopped. It's been a characteristic of this uprising since the beginning. So this is a chant. The Syrian people are one came out right in the beginning when before Hussein Shaban, who was an advisor for Assad, came out and said that the protesters are coming out with sectarian chants. So Syrian people is one is a sectarian chant according to the regime. There perhaps is some more enthusiasm. I think it's the battles that are being won on the ground by the Free Syrian Army that is allowing people to come out a bit more and show what they want, what they truly think.
And reading a little bit more from this paper, from page 7, Rami Khouri, a very prominent Arab commentator and political analyst, calling the Doha talks American amateurism, basically criticizing Washington for the way they've gone about this, saying that because it looks like the U.S. is coordinating it in a sense, it's just another misstep, that the stepping away from the SNC was a mistake, that it shows kind of that the U.S. is literally, what he says, is shopping for an alternative to the Assad regime. Pretty harsh criticism, but this sense that, okay, we're already seeing a lot of divisions in the opposition. If this doesn't work in Doha, what it will do is create more divisions and more of a debate over who's really legitimate here. Just going around for final thoughts. Let's start with you, Jordan. We haven't heard you for a while. Any thoughts about this or questions you want to ask? Just kidding, we lost Jordan. Henry, you want to wrap us up your final thoughts for the week?
Yeah, I mean, I'm really hopeful that something in Doha can come about and that we can see a concerted effort to unify, and hopefully that will show on the ground that if these rebel groups can join up and share their resources and hopefully agree on certain matters, then we can certainly see a great push and momentum to hopefully bring about some sort of free zone in the north, which I think is totally vital if the rebels are going to see future success.
Mohammed?
Well, I really don't have any other observations. I just wanted to thank the person who sent us a question, and I mispronounced his name, so I'll correct it here. It's Matthew Bowler, and we can go. We'll talk more next week for sure. So.
Matthew, you're awesome. He's one of our most consistent G+ friends. Christy, any final thoughts for the week?
I think the most important thing is to not forget about the displaced people or the refugees. The focus goes a lot towards the fighting. And I don't know if I lost you or not. Okay, I'm still here. The focus goes a lot towards the fighting, and I think we have to remember that the winter months are coming up. Do we have a website or something that we can tell people, blankets, that kind of thing might help these people out?
We posted it yesterday, we tweeted it, and we will do it again.
Okay.
That was a great plug, Christy. We'll definitely get it out. We're looking for ways you guys can help. Everybody's asking us for ways they can help, and we're going to be putting them together. We'll post them on Syria Deeply when we launch, November 17th, and we'll make sure that we get it out on social media as well. Looks like Jordan came back in. Jordan, are you around? Okay, well, we're really grateful for Jordan's thoughts from Zatri refugee camp. Thank you guys so much for hanging out. We'll be doing it again next Saturday at 12 noon Eastern Time. Have a great week. We'll be reporting out, tweeting, and posting on G+, everything we see along the way. Bye, guys.
Bye. Thanks.